Without the ones like you, who work tirelessly to keep things running, everything would suddenly stop. Hospitals, factories, schools, and power plants, they all depend on you. No matter the weather, emergency, or time of day, you're the ones who get it done. At Grainger, we're here for you with professional-grade industrial supplies. Count on real-time product availability and fast delivery. Call, clickgrainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
This is a message for the creative and the curious souls out there. So have you heard of the podcast, Your Own Magic? Your Own Magic is a podcast with hundreds of expansive guests from artists, authors, poets, activists, musicians, entrepreneurs, thought leaders, spiritual and intuitive guides, and so many unique specialties with people sharing their magic to stimulate your curiosity and excite you in the exploration and unleashing of your own magic. And I must say, it is wild what you were able to heal and reveal within yourself when listening. So while you're tuned into the podcast you're currently listening to, search for and save for later the podcast Your Own Magic. It is hosted by me, Raquel Mantra, and tune in every Monday wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hello and welcome to mini episode 222 of Real Life Ghost Stories, and I have 4 spooky stories for you today, and the last story comes from the 18th of October 2022, and story number 1 comes from Kevin. I've always had what I call insight. It's like knowing an extra level of the world around me, sometimes predicting events and getting a sense of things around me that no one else can feel. It's like really strong instinct. A few years back, I went to work at the Theatre Royal Windsor, which is a 200-year-old theatre with a lot of personality, and not always in a good way. On my first day working in the bar and listening to the other staff talking about the lady in black walking through the walls and Agnes, who was the long-dead seamstress who didn't like people going into the costume department in the attic, I somehow was never bothered by any of that, as they were mostly just stories told to new staff members to creep them out. But since I had my insight, I kind of knew what was basically bullshit or not. Over the years, I had risen through the ranks and become a duty manager, and that meant after the shows each night, when the staff had left, it was my responsibility to lock up all the fire exits and turn off all the lights. You then had to exit through the auditorium before getting out of the building through the stage door. This one night, the theatre just felt unsettled and unwelcoming, and it was triggering my insight almost continuously, like seeing a shadow out of the corner of my eye. I had finished the accounts and locked up the offices. I grabbed the chains from a hook to put around the fire exit handles. As I came back from the last fire exit, I closed the fire doors at the top of the corridor and began walking towards the offices when I heard a very loud thud behind me, and I turned around to see the heavy fire doors swing back open, which took a lot of strength to do, and then slam shut like someone in a powerful rage had stormed through them. To say I felt uneasy is an understatement. I went up the stairs towards the door leading to the offices when I felt someone right behind me, and then what felt like ice fingers on the back of my neck through my hair. I have never entered the code to open the door that fast before. I went through and quickly looked behind me as I closed the door, and no one was there. I knew no one else was in the main building except the person at the stage door, and I was in radio contact with them, so I knew it wasn't them. I grabbed my coat, but then knew I had to go back the way I came to leave the building. I took a deep breath with my adrenaline pumping, and I walked into the auditorium, and it's especially creepy at night with the lights off. However, that night, it was like there were dozens of eyes watching me walk down the aisle past them, and the atmosphere was thick, almost like it was trying to slow me down. I put on a neutral expression as I got to the stage door because the person at the office had always been a bit creeped out easily and she didn't like working night shifts on the close, and I didn't want to frighten her. I figured it was best to make everything seem okay, and we calmly walked to the car park together. I worked there for a few more years and nothing so intense happened again. Yes, there were unexplained footsteps, an occasional voice I didn't recognise, creaking noises, which, let's face it, in a 200-year-old building are easily explainable. But for some reason that night, the building seemed to be awake and in a very bad mood. Oh, I love a theatre ghost story. They're just my favourites. I love them so much. Kevin, I would be interested to know if you had any inkling as to what this was. This thing that sort of slammed the door angrily, fingers through your hair. Ooh, that is horrible. That is horrible. It puts me in mind of this scene in The Grudge, you know, when she's washing her hair and the hand comes out of the back of her head and that's what it reminds me of. I would be so freaked in general having to go through the auditorium in darkness at night time in order to be able to leave the building after you've locked up. Oh, because it just feels so big and empty, and there's all those seats, all those places for people to hide. Don't want to put that in people's minds, but there is. And then you've just had this horrible experience where something has violently slammed through a fire door, ran its fingers through your hair, and you have to go back through again and try and keep it cool. I mean, fair play to you. It's very nice of you to keep it cool, knowing that the other person who's working was going to be easily freaked out and wouldn't be okay with that information. And those fire doors are really heavy. They are really, really heavy. So it's not a case of a breeze could open a fire door, or, you know, or it was like, I don't know, some sort of mechanism problem. Those fire doors are big and heavy, and they're big and heavy for a reason, because they're fire doors. So it does take a considerable amount of force to open one of those doors. I would be questioning the strength, the CrossFit regime of that entity, to be honest. And story number 2 comes from Aimee. This isn't a personal story, but something that happened to my parents when I was younger. We used to go to a holiday park in Woolacombe Bay, which I believe is an old town in North Devon. When we checked into our chalet, my mum said she had an eerie feeling about this place, but brushed it off as she hadn't ever seen a ghost before or experienced any kind of paranormal activity. It was a 1-bedroomed chalet with a pull-out double bed. My sister and I were really young, so my parents took it in turns to sleep in the bed with us, then one on the pull-out bed in the living room. It was the second night and around 4 a.m, and my mum was woken up to a black mass standing at the end of the bed. And when she sat up to see if it was me or my sister, the black mass ran at her through the bed and into the wall. My mum was pretty shaken up, but put it down to maybe a nightmare or her imagination. She never mentioned it to my dad, as she didn't want to scare us, as we were old enough to know what ghosts were, and also my dad probably wouldn't have believed her, because they aren't the kind of people who believe in the supernatural. On the last night, it was my dad's turn to sleep in the living room, and again at 4 a.m, my dad was woken up to the same black mass at the end of the bed, which again ran at my dad and into the wall behind the bed. But the force of the run, and I suppose the shock, caused my dad to fall out of the bed and fracture his wrist, which we later found out on a trip to A&E. In the morning, my dad was explaining to my mum that he had fallen out of the bed and explained why, but was laughing because he didn't think my mum would believe him. When my mum said, "That happened to me 2 nights ago." Let's just say we were relieved to be checking out that day, and I believe the holiday park has since closed. We never did find out if there was a history to that place. I've checked myself many times. My parents haven't experienced any ghost encounters since, but it is a story they tell when ghost conversations are brought up from time to time. Of course, if that happened to you individually and you're not somebody who's into the supernatural, etc., like your mom's first encounter, of course you're going to go, well, that's weird, it was probably like a really vivid dream or whatever, but you wouldn't be dwelling on it, or you wouldn't be trying to find a paranormal explanation because it's not part of your day-to-day life. However, having that experience with your dad that a few days later, where he's experienced the exact same thing which has caused him to fall out of bed and fracture his wrist, is an entirely different situation. So like a black mist at the end of the bed makes me think kind of shadow person vibes, but then also repeating the same action again and again. You know, the exact same thing happened to your mum and dad. This thing was stood at the end of the bed, then it ran through the bed. Obviously causing your dad to get such a shock that he fell out of the bed, which I can totally understand. Considering both your mum and your dad had the same experience, right? And hadn't discussed it prior to your dad obviously falling out of bed and breaking his wrist. Can we speculate that this is real? This is a real entity? So if it is a shadow person, then what is the purpose? Is the purpose literally just to scare people? Is that what the purpose of shadow people is? Just to frighten people? Because if that's the case, I've said it before and I'll say it again, get a better job. Get a less dickish job in the afterlife, and let me tell you, I'll have more respect for shadow people. Today's episode is sponsored by HelloFresh. I cannot keep risking life and limb in this zombie apocalypse to go to the grocery store. If only there was an easier way. Wait, what's this conveniently placed leaflet? With HelloFresh you get farm fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. Skip trips to the grocery store and the impending zombie doom and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. You know what'll really take your mind off the flesh-hungry horde? Fast and fresh recipes. HelloFresh's latest line of meals featuring robust flavours and filling portions are ready in less than 15 minutes. Enjoy taste and quality done quick with recipes like falafel power bowls, seared steak and potatoes with béarnaise sauce, or Southwest pork and bean burritos. And let's face it, in the zombie apocalypse, we gotta cook smart and we gotta cook fast. And you know what? We don't all want to be out there fighting our way to the store, so you can stock up on snacks, sides, desserts and more at HelloFresh Market. Simply add these staples and sweets to your weekly order and they'll arrive on your doorstep along with your meals. More yummy food, less mortal peril. Fictional zombie apocalypse aside, I have actually used HelloFresh in real life for years and I love it. I used them long before I ever advertised for them. It saved me so much time, so much money and so much food waste. I'm also not a very good cook, so it allows me to cook and eat better. Go to hellofresh.com/reallifeghoststories22 and use the code reallifeghoststories22 for 22 free meals plus free shipping. That's hellofresh.com/reallifeghoststories22 and use code reallifeghoststories22 for 22 free meals plus free shipping. Oh no, what is that? Oh no, it was meant to be fictional. It wasn't meant to be real. And story number 3 comes from Emily. I remember the first time death became real to me. My brother was at a football camp and I was about 6 years old. The camp took place at a church, and although my family is far from religious, my mom liked others thinking she was close to God. The church asked a man who had a near-death experience to come and speak to the children in the camp. I have no idea why they thought this was an appropriate lesson, but that didn't seem to stop them. The man stood in front of us all and told the story of how he almost died. I don't remember how, but the last thing he said has stuck with me ever since. He said, "If you don't pray every day, God will not bring you back as he did for me." I was terrified of death after that, and I swore I would pray to stay alive. I no longer have these feelings, but I thought I would give a little insight into my relationship with death. Before the football camp incident, I had never feared dying. I had a great-grandmother whom I share a name with. She was hard of hearing, and a past stroke made it very difficult for people to understand what she was saying. I do not remember this, but I have been told that when I was little I would go and sit in her room and talk to her and listen to her even though no one else knew what we were saying. She passed not long after, and I inherited her bedroom furniture. It was a beautiful rustic green and I adored it. My mom told me that after her passing I would tell her stories about my grandmother as though we were still having our little chats. My mom just thought I missed her. One night though, I went to my mom and told her a story about my grandmother. This was a story that I shouldn't have known, as I wasn't alive when it happened, and only the people there knew about it. I wish I remembered what she said and what we talked about. I think she was visiting me after her death, and the only explanation I have is having her furniture and sharing her name. I think children are more accepting of the paranormal, and that's why I was able to see her. I sometimes wish that was still possible. Later, when I was 16, my mother's mom died of an overdose. I was never close to her, as my family didn't want us to be involved with her drug taking. I only really know what she looks like through pictures. Before the news got to us that she had died, I was at the mall. From behind, I saw a woman in her 70s with thick, long grey hair, just like the pictures. She turned and I saw her. The woman I had seen several times in albums and baby photos. I called my mom and told her, and we just shrugged it off as though it was nothing. We never really knew where she was or where her life had taken her, so we just assumed she was in our hometown for the time being. Later that week, we got a call from my mom's uncle saying that she had passed away. The crazy thing, though, was that she was already dead when I saw her. Part of me feels that she was leaving me with one more memory of her. Most recently, and my last very bizarre experience, came about a month ago. I was standing outside saying goodnight to my boyfriend. I always walk him to his car, which is parked in the street outside my house. It was dark, but the street lamps were on, so the road was very visible. I have a brother who lives about 2 hours from us, and he comes home randomly all of the time. My boyfriend and I said our goodbyes, and as I was walking back to my house, I saw a tall man who had a sort of hunch. I just assumed my brother had arrived out of the blue as usual. I see odd things out of the corner of my eye all the time and never say anything because it freaks my family out. This time though, I really thought it was my brother, so I shouted out, "Hey Andrew, what are you doing outside?" Nothing. I was so confused, and then he was gone. Andrew hadn't come home that weekend, and I was too scared to tell my family anything. Seeing people in my house never frightens me. I just kindly say out loud, "Please don't scare me." This time though, I thought I was alone in the street at night. It's amazing the things that you remember from childhood. Like if somebody came to a camp and told me that if I didn't pray every day, God won't bring you back as he did for me, right? I would be praying until my hands hurt. You know what I mean? I'm not entirely sure what they were trying to achieve by exposing 6-year-olds to that story, but I guess it's that kind of misguided idea that fear is a good way to teach children. And that's pretty chaotic energy. I love that story about your grandmother. And you know what? I wonder if genuinely if you could understand her as a child. So I know that you said she'd had a stroke and it made understanding her very difficult. I think that children often have a much easier time understanding, say, other children with a speech impediment, for example. And I think it's partly to do with not having expectations of language in the same way that adults do. So children just accept things, and maybe because of that acceptance, it's easier to understand what your grandmother was trying to say rather than trying to figure out what you're expecting her to say. I'm not sure that makes any sense, but it does in my head. And why would she not want to come back and keep talking to the person who could understand the things that she was saying? And later, with your mother's mother, it's very sad that obviously her drug taking had impacted the family so much. But if she wasn't a part of your life, then it's not likely that you would be thinking about her regularly. If you didn't know her, for example, if you'd never really met her, if you didn't know anything about her, and then suddenly you see her after the point that she has died, you know, maybe in death she just wanted to come back and see you one more time, having not had that relationship with you while she was alive. And I wonder if maybe, you know, like you said, you're more susceptible to things. So I know it's probably very unpleasant to see somebody outside in the street and to think it's your brother and then realise that it's not actually your brother at all. But maybe that susceptibility means that obviously you're just more likely to see people anywhere, really. And Emily, I don't know why you would ever listen to that and find any comfort in it, because it's probably the least comforting thing that somebody could say to you. So I apologise, and we're going to move on. And story number 4 comes from Harley. 5 years ago, my sister passed away. I always believed in ghosts, I just never had witnessed anything until she passed. I was still living at home with my mom, and after we got through her funeral, that's when things started. Nothing crazy. We would come home to our dining room lights on very dim, and it's never come on like that before. I believe it was her playing with the light to let us know that she was okay. Sometimes we would be sitting in our living room, and out of the corner of our eye we would catch the light come on again. We got used to it and would say, "Hi Tina," whenever the light would pop on, or if we came home to it on. 5 months after my sister passed, my nephew's dad also passed away. My nephew at a young age, therefore, lost both of his parents. We knew for a couple of days and didn't want to ruin the 4th of July for my nephew, because that was his and his mom's favourite holiday. The day after, my mom decided to tell my nephew after I got home from work. And she told me that whenever I pulled into the driveway, she saw a misty, light-like figure move from where they were to the dining room and disappear. When we sat down to tell him, my son, who was 2 at the time, came up to my nephew and said, "Tina is so sorry, Ryder. Tina is so sorry," and walked away. My son didn't understand death at this age, so there was no way he said it on his own. But that comment left my mom and I speechless to this day. My son and I moved out of my mom's about a year later, and I have some of my sister's ashes. In Christmas of 2018, we decorated the tree, and one morning my Grinch ornament that my sister and I had the same one of was sitting on my couch when I came downstairs to leave for work and drop my son off at daycare in the morning. I know this wasn't scary, but more of a comforting story. But the chain of events that happened after my sister's death kind of helped us get through it, like she was still there even though she physically wasn't. It sounds like your family went through a lot of traumatic stuff in a short space of time, and I'm so glad that you were able to find some comfort in your sister being there after she had passed. And always in these stories, I don't think objectivity matters. I think what matters is subjectively how that made you feel. If that made you and your mum feel like we can get through this, we can survive because Tina is still here and letting us know that she is okay, then that is what matters. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Thank you to Kevin, Aimee, Emily and Harley for sending in your stories. Remember, the last story came from the 18th of October 2022. And if you would like to send in your story, you can email it to reallifeghoststoriespodcast@gmail.com. You can also check out the website reallifeghoststoriespodcast.com. And if you are desperate for extra spooky content, you can sign up to patreon.com/reallifeghoststories, where for $5 a month or $2 a month, you get access to heaps of extra content, as well as every single main and mini episode completely ad-free. And on that note, I shall see you next time.
Membership fees apply after free trial. Cancel anytime.
Can I be real for a second? That goal you have to exercise and eat better, you really can do it. But nobody is going to do it for you. And nobody has to, because you can do it if you have the right tools and a community that cares about helping you get results. And that's us, Beachbody. It's as convenient as your TV or laptop, but you need to decide that you're worth it. Let us help you succeed. Here's how. Go to beachbody.com to claim your free membership and start feeling great.
Download Upside and start getting cash back wherever you roll. It's like having your own hype man. Get an average of 17% cash back at restaurants.
Oh, it's dinner time.
Average of 13% on groceries.
Get those groceries.
10 cents per gallon average cash back on gas.
It's go time.
Plus, cash back at participating convenience stores too.
Stacks on stacks.
Users can earn hundreds of dollars a year, 3 times more than other apps.
Upside, show me that money.
All right, we get it. It's easy. Just sign up for the free Upside app and start getting cash back for doing you. Download the free Upside app and use promo code DOYOU10 for an extra $10 cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. That's promo code DOYOU10 for an extra $10 on the free Upside app. Get cash back for doing you with the free app from Upside.